and welcome to the Unknown Webcast. This is just a bit of a trigger warning for those who believe words are more injurious than sticks and stones. I really am so conservative, I can't turn left even when I'm driving.
Yes, you are.
That is definitely true. In addition to being conservative, uh, I really.
You really are.
I really am. Now I got lost. I got lost. I'm so conservative I get lost when I can't turn left. In
Sorry for
addition
that.
to giving trigger warnings to our viewers, Ron Hensel and I both drink coffee for your protection.
Yes, we do.
This week, Bill Hunsburger joins us to talk about a conversation with an atheist. My name is Don Vino. I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast. And our senior researcher is still Ron
Still,
Hensel.
despite his many left turns,
Yeah, and here's Ronnie Baby.
greetings from sunny Florida, where the palm tree came out, saw its shadow, and now we have 12 more months of summer. Our sponsor for this edition of the Unknown Webcast is World's End Theology Outlet, your one-stop resource for half-baked heresies, dubious doctrines, and other ideas whose time has gone. World's End Theology Outlet. Our regular legal disclaimer: our guest on today's webcast, insert name here, that will be Bill Honsberger, has no connection whatsoever to any of the satirical content of the Unknown Webcast, hereafter referred to as the webcast, although we probably will not mention it again. The satirical content includes any and all commercials, end credits, puns, smart remarks, or anything else that might fall under the definition of satire. In the meantime, Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. bears no liability for or responsibility for anyone's opinions regarding this satirical content. Notice: the opinions expressed on this webcast are ours and should be yours too. If you enjoy it, or if it really annoys you and you want to inflict it on someone else to ensure your continued access, please go to midwestoutreach.org, click the yellow donate button, and contribute as you feel led. And as you do, never fear, this webcast is Y2K compliant. And don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite video channels. And now our special, very special, supremely special guest, Bill Hunsberger. I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well. What's going on?
This is the widest dash of satire on the internet.
The white dash. Yeah, are we really?
The widest dash, yes. I mean, that dash of satire in the intro, I'm sorry, that doesn't quite say it as it really is.
Nothing is as it really is on our program.
as it really is, or as you would really like it to be.
My poor, wonderful wife, Terry, she's so nice. It's frustrating. I'm not gifted that way. She is so nice.
Kind of irritating when people are nice.
She does not appreciate all of the satire that seems to come out of me because I read the Bible, which has a ton of satire in it. And I'm like, Terry, the Bible this is my people, the way they speak, the way Isaiah spoke, or the way Jesus spoke to the Pharisees sometimes. Satire is everywhere. Paul uses satire constantly. So with you guys, I'm in good company.
Well, you're right. Years ago, Ron had created a section on our website, World's End Theology Outlet, modeled after, in the Chicago area at least, we had something called Land's End Outlet. And so we started getting complaints from people about, that's mean, you shouldn't have satire. And so we took it down. But after a while, we started looking at going, wait a minute. There's like 6 types of satire, 5 of which are in the Bible. Well, if the Bible uses them, why can't we? And so we went back to it.
Amen. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Love is not the same thing as niceness.
Yeah.
Our world has lost that, especially here in American churches. Being nice is supposed to bring people to the Lord. It doesn't. It's not that
some things just need to be made fun of. Oh, what is
some things? Absolutely. What does Isaiah say? It. They don't stop to think about this thing they hold in their right hand, which is a nice way of saying it. That's the way it's translated in the English. It's a nice way of saying morons. Your God you made that you hold in your right hand cannot do a thing for you. But I'm paraphrasing, sort of.
You know what? I may have to step out a second while you two carry on momentarily, because I'm having trouble making my screens switch properly.
Oh, okay. Well, I see them going like moving around.
You see them doing something? I'm not seeing them doing anything.
Did the coffee have some LSD in it this morning, Don?
Yeah, Don, what's up?
Because you're
I'm going to pull out of here. I'll be right back.
He's going to pull out and come back in. Yeah.
coward.
Except now you're the only one here.
Yeah.
So
Now nobody's here.
And okay, let's see what I can do about this.
You were
There we
saying
go.
it was bad with tech, Don.
Yeah, well, there's tech and then there's tech. I mean, Don knows things about this system that I can't even figure out. I just pushed a button just now to get our pictures to show, and I have no idea if I did the right thing. But we're both showing to ourselves.
At least the two nicer, better looking people are still on the podcast, Ron.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So apparently we're going to talk about atheists today, or atheism, or
Yeah. Well, I was at the American Atheist Convention last month. Been there 4 times. So
AAC. Wow.
It's an interesting bunch. They're just like that. The atheist movement has split several times. So this is the.
You mean they have denominations in the atheist movement? They have sects and heresies.
That's one way to call it. Even the Satanists have split in pieces this last year. The Satanic Temple
still not working.
Well, we can see it, Don.
Why don't you sign off and come back in? Did you do that already?
That's what I did. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I see you.
I can, for instance.
That's okay. Go ahead. Carry on. We'll do it this way.
How do I put Bob in the main screen here? Bill.
Bill.
He's on the bottom screen. There's 3 of us in there. Oh, what did you do?
I pressed a button and nothing changed for me, but apparently it changed for you.
It did, yeah.
So now am I in
control? So there's something going on with StreamYard. We're not going to worry about it today. It should be
attempt to adjust the picture.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't get any prettier.
Nobody remembers the outer limits, do they?
Okay. It seems to think that there's 4 things in here.
I have no idea what that means. I think this topic might be more interesting.
I think there's StreamYard issues today, but let's talk about atheism, because they don't believe in anything.
Well, Don, you were raised an atheist, Don. I was raised in nothing. Atheism, in a formal sense, requires some thought processes. And when you're just a druggy stoner, let's party idiot, you're not thinking formally that way. If there's God out there, I don't care. I don't know. And it's nothing to me. As opposed to the formal atheists, I was raised a Christian. I've rejected all that. 99% of the people I talked to at the American Atheist Convention, just like at Paganacon when we were together on, 99% of them were former Christians.
Right.
There's like 1 or 2 Jewish fellows, atheists, in the American Atheist Convention. And a lot of the Jewish kids I grew up with, you could call them, they were Reformed, they're atheists. But almost all of them are former Christians of some sort. Dawkins was a former Christian, just like Darwin was, or all sorts of other people, Nietzsche, huge, the guy I studied in graduate school. Hardcore Christian, entire waves of pastors and grandfathers, pastor, dads, a pastor, blah, blah, blah. And he turns away, becomes probably one of the more famous atheists of all time. One of the most famous ones, excuse me. So, atheism.
Okay. I was lost while you were talking all of that. So I've been trying to figure out what's going on here. Anyway, so you were at the Atheist Conference. You said 99% of them are former Christians.
Yes.
And
so seminars, which they have different titles for all the seminars on different subjects. The guy this year the main speaker was Keith Ellison, the AG of Minnesota. That was almost the AG of the whole country. He was one of the worst guys. He's under indictment. He's a bad guy. He was their
guest speaker. Under indictment. He was the guy who did Derek Chauvin, isn't he? The Derek Chauvin.
He was the large case person on that one. Yep.
So what's he under indictment for? Just out of curiosity.
Well, as I understand it, there's all sorts of financial issues going on that he's been under investigation for. It may not be, I should correct that, Ron. It may not be a formal indictment yet, but it seems to be heading that way from what I've read. I don't follow it much, but he was the main speaker, and he's one angry guy. He's buddies with Louis Farrakhan, so that tells you everything you probably need to know.
Wow, wow. That's a big wow for me.
Yeah, it is a big wow. Anyways, so here's all these atheists, and whatever the conference seminars, whatever the seminars were about, this one might be in the joys of abortion, this one might be this, that. It all came down to, I'm a former Christian, they're idiots, ha ha ha, the whole room laughs, and they might mention the subject that they're supposed to talk about. But at almost every seminar I sat in got boring after a while, because all it was how idiots, Christians are idiots and we're so much better than that. To take Daniel Dennis' line, we're the brights, nobody said those words, but that's the attitude.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun for you, I take it.
Well, it is fun. I had some great talks. I will tell you, this one was really exciting. There's a fellow there amongst the American atheists named Aaron Ra, R-A. I think that's a stage name. But you can find tons of his videos online. And he has he's an angry biker looking kind of guy. He has a special hatred for Mormons, Christians, Jehovah's Witnesses, anybody in a religion of a sort. And you can find all these videos where he just sails this. And I saw him going after the JWs 4 years.
Okay, what happened?
In Phoenix. And they had a little booth set up outside. And
we lost some of your words there.
I'm sorry. Well, Aaron is smart. He's aggressive. He's angry. He hates all these things. So I'd seen him several years in a row now, and I'd never talked to the guy. And so I'm praying, literally back in February. I'm like, Lord, I would love to talk to Aaron Ra. Because I've seen him go after all these idiots, basically, most of the people he talks to. So that was my prayer request, and I never do that. It's not like, Ron going to Pagan-a-con. I'm praying for Mo, the Satanist. Well, I might have prayed for Mo, but usually I don't know the people we're going to talk to. But Aaron, I knew was going to be there. Aaron's usually a presenter, so I'm going to go I want to talk to Aaron. So anyways, I got there on a Friday. I had to do a Zoom class, so I'm late for the conference at the hotel. I get to the hotel. I'm hungry, so I go grab some lunch. And I walk out of the bar restaurant area, and Aaron's 20 feet in front of me with this huge, beautiful, big white dog called a Great Pyrenees. I didn't know the breed, but it was a gorgeous dog. And there's Aaron right there. So I'm like, oh, man, what an awesome dog. What is this? I'm talking to him about the dog. Then I said, Aaron, I've been talking to you, or I've been watching you for several years now, and I've seen some of your videos and stuff. And you always like to rip on Mormons, JWs, Christians, stuff like that. I love to talk about these issues. Would you be willing to have lunch or breakfast with me? And it kind of startled him. And then he goes, yeah, okay. He says, I'm booked Friday and Saturday, but how about Sunday morning? I'm like, okay, great. It's Easter morning. They always do their conventions on Easter. So we get to Easter morning. I'm staying with a pastor friend of mine. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to meet with Aaron or if I'm going to come to church for Sunday services, Easter services with you guys, but we'll see. Saturday night at the Atheist convention was the drag ball.
Oh, no.
And all that it means. And I'm thinking, he's probably going to be so hammered by being at the drag ball, like I'm sure everybody else was, that, Sunday morning he's not going to be able to meet. So I text him thinking he's not even going to respond. 8 o'clock Sunday morning, he responds, yeah, I'll still meet. So we met at 10. And he's already got his orange juice with vodka, getting the start to his day. I'm buying him breakfast. So he wants a Bloody Mary to go along with his vodka and orange juice. That's the beginning of our conversation. Here's the cool thing. This guy's so angry and so aggressive. We start talking about each other's backgrounds and stuff. We have a lot of the same backgrounds. We both had abusive stepdads, knocked us around. We both did the whole drug and alcohol thing, which he still does the alcohol, obviously. But we're getting through this whole thing. Then this other atheist from this big atheist group comes over, hey, he wants to have breakfast. So, okay, we're all three sitting there. And we, just getting to know each other and all this kind of fun stuff. His dad wasn't a full Nazi, not the way the left uses Nazi term. I mean, his dad's trying to get him to read Mein Kampf. His mom is a Mormon. So this is one screwed up home just on ideological levels.
Yeah.
And he's, like I said, whole biker thing going, long hair. He's just an angry guy. And it was so cool. So we were sitting there talking friendly, really friendly the whole time. And they're drinking and I'm not. It's breakfast and everything, this kind of stuff. And they're starting to ask, well, you don't do this anymore. You don't do that anymore. I said, well, yeah, I used to do all those things, dude. And I said, then God rescued me. And when I said that, the headlights went on. And they're like, what is he? I'm sure in their head is like, what is he doing here? Why are we talking to him? Blah, blah, blah. And so we just got this whole discussion going. And I, was correcting some of the things they were saying about world religions. They don't know what they're talking about, All religion. If you listen to atheists, most of them will always say this. Well, religion does this and religion does that. I'm like, you can't say that, guys. I said, there's a difference in religions. They don't all believe the same thing. They don't act the same way. I said, Al-Qaeda is not the Little Sisters of the Poor. I'm sorry. All religions do the same thing. And you hear that from Sam Harris or Dawkins or all the rest. So anyways, we had this great, really friendly talk. And at the end, Aaron goes, well, it was just some big emotional thing for you. I get that. And I said, actually, Aaron, it wasn't a big emotional thing. I was on LSD when it happened. And the Lord rescued me in the middle of all this stuff. And again, he's taken back. Well, at the end of it, he comes up and gives me a big bear hug. I'm the Christian that he rips on constantly, kind of stuff in all his videos. And he comes up and gives me a bear hug. And, I would say we came away friends out of this whole fun thing. And I'm hoping to talk to him again. And I've got his information and we texted. And I was just amazed, I didn't go in there to yell at them, you idiots, you're all going to hell. I went in there to let them know, if nothing else, to come out with, there's a Christian here that doesn't hate me, despite the angry, if you watch Aaron's videos, you'll get what I'm talking about. This angry, very intelligent, very aggressive sort of guy. And I was really pleased with that. I'm like, thank you, Lord Jesus. And then I had another talk with another so-called atheist, more of a Buddhist than an atheist, named Fred. And we had a long talk for a couple hours. So there I am in a wonderful place. I will tell you this, if you walk into the American Atheist Conference for a year convention, Baphomets and upside down crosses, everywhere. So ripping on Christianity is the norm, right? And I did I'm sure you guys have done this before too. If you encounter these kind of people, it's like, hey, you guys are doing a great job. Let's do it. Let's do Islam now. And of course, you get all sorts of excuses of why they don't know anything about Islam. Well, this year, for the first time at the convention, there was a table there attacking Islam. Nobody ever worked the booth. I don't know who set it up. Empty. Every other table had people with it the whole weekend. Nobody there, but there were several. It was obviously women, because there were several pamphlets on the table, pictures, really interesting ones, of talking about how badly Islam treats women. And I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. They never do this. They never do anything like it. But there's this table, ripping on the Muslims. And I thought, well, it's not an interesting, because if you listen to Sam Harris, one of the reasons why Sam Harris, we talked about splits at the beginning, Ron, one of the reasons Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins or people like that are not part of this group, they kind of all used to be under one big thing, is because, like Christopher Hitchens, they rip on Islam. And the hardcore political left, and everybody at the Atheist Convention is hardcore political left, the hard left will not criticize Islam, even though it should. Even if you, like Christopher Hitchens, to his, one thing to his credit, he ripped on Islam because of how they treated homosexuals and how they treated women. Good for Chris. He's at least
but not how they treat Israel or Jews.
whole different issue. Yeah. But anyways, it was an interesting time. And I was really thankful I got to go. And next year, they've always settled at Easter for years. Next year, they're not having it over Easter weekend. They're having it in August in DC this next year, because the World Humanist Association is having their big conference in DC next year, 2026. So there's a target for Christian missionaries from around the country, I hope, and maybe around the world, to head on over and have some fun with some atheists.
Oh.
Okay, Don, gotta stop you right here. I think he just gave us the idea for the commercial we're looking for: fun with atheists.
Fun with atheists. Okay.
Let's work on that. Let's work that angle.
Play with that one, Ron.
Because we don't have a commercial for atheism, which is really weird since we're like an apologetics podcast. But
for worldviews, yeah, you got a whole worldview.
Yeah, we need fun. Stuff. What does atheist fun look like? Bill?
Drag ball. Everybody get loaded.
How
the difference? Don's gone to PaganCon with me the last several years. PaganCon, and this year they were both in Minneapolis, which was fun, but PaganCon and American Atheists are at least allegedly, completely apart ideologically. One, everything is divine, everything is God.
Right.
The other, there is no such thing as God, right? But the thing that's so in common is they hate Christians with all the ounce of the being. They're former Christians. They're huge on abortion. And in both events, they have basically a drag ball, where your PaganCon had a whole big event, a big ball where you're encouraged to dress up, cosplay type of stuff. And, you can dress in obscene fashion. And I didn't go to the drag ball at the Atheist Convention, but I'm sure it was the same. And getting drunk is, yes, all a big part. So they're so common in the way they act.
There's something else that they have that they share in common unwittingly, And that is what Peter Jones calls oneism. Dr. Peter Jones calls oneism versus twoism.
Oneism.
Everything is one. And so there is no God that interacts outside of creation. Everything is creation.
See, their worldview doesn't get to the Lawrence Welk level where it goes and a 1 and a 2. It's just and a 1.
Yeah, it's not the Lawrence
Terrible.
Welk one. Yeah, right.
No, not the Lawrence Welk.
So in atheism, everything is one. I think Carl Sagan said it best. This is before he knew better. That the cosmos is all there is and all there was and all there ever will be. And then he goes on to say, we're just stardust. So everything is just one. It's all physical. And with Christianity and Islam is the same way. There are two. There's creation and the creator that is separate from but interacts with the creation. So atheists and paganism share that aspect of a worldview. Everything is just one.
So
yeah, good point.
There aren't any teetotaler atheists or atheists who.
Oh, I'm sure there are. But why?
But why? What's the point?
Yeah,
Lady Campion asks, how did you begin to going to atheist conventions?
Well, they advertise. And so for me, the first one was 4 years ago. And so some of us from Haven, rolled over to the Atheist Convention in Georgia. I think was the first one, then Phoenix, then Philadelphia last year, then Minneapolis this year. And again, they advertise. You can go on their webpage and you can sign up and off we go.
Yeah. So wait a minute, what was the original question? How did you
end up going to conventions?
How did you begin going to atheist conventions?
So you were informed of them, but I'm wondering if the real question is why? Why would you go? Yeah.
Well, what does the Lord say? Going to all the nations, right? And we use, as part of our advertising for Haven, that verse where it talks about the lost sheep that has walked away. The one, how much the Lord values even that one. So the fact that these people are aggressively anti-Christian there is no different than going into a Mormon visiting center or going to the Buddhist temples we go to and going to all sorts of other places. These are human beings made in the image of God who desperately need the gospel. And our call as believers is to take the gospel to people who need it. And
it's the mission field. And they're inviting us to come to their event. They're evangelizing too.
Yeah, I'm not so sure they're inviting as much as they left the door open because, for example, at the Atheist Convention, if you look at their bylaws, there's this whole statement about, we will not have any prejudice against any race, gender, religion.
Oh.
Okay, guys, then you've opened that door, right? You said, Don, they didn't intend to open the door, maybe. But there was a couple of us, there's been the last several years, there's been at least 2 of us from Haven going to this. And this year there was another Christian presenting, like we like to do, Don, if we have the opportunity. And it was horrible. He was presenting with an atheist, how they introduced atheism versus Christianity in this public school up there in Minnesota. And all he could talk about, the only thing the gospel talked about is how he got filled with the Spirit and it changed his life. And I was far enough back, I'm not sure if I heard a or the. And so I went up to him afterwards and, he went to seminary and all this kind of stuff. I said, I'm curious. I'm not meaning to be hypercritical or anything, but isn't this whole issue about the gospel about Jesus and what he did? Not about a spirit that comes into you and changes your life. That certainly can happen and does happen if that's the Holy Spirit. But my gosh, the gospel is about Jesus. And he goes, well, I guess I should have said that. Yeah, maybe you should have.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, the caffeinated Colorado crew.
He's our kind of people.
They are definitely our kind of people. That's right.
I can't drink caffeine. I'm just like an LDS. You know what?
That's right. I tell people frequently. My doctor sometimes asks me, how many cups of coffee do you drink a day? I go, just 2, but I don't tell her that they're 24 ounces each.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Any conversations with the atheists regarding abortion? ? Always interested to hear their varying perspectives.
The convention, holds up. I would argue that what I've heard for 4 years running now is abortion is the moral good, not a moral good, the moral good. And we're going to put money, they raise money every year to promote abortions. It is the right thing for the planet. It is the right thing for all of us. And they're serious business about abortion. There is no, I have not run into any pro-life atheists. Nat Hendhoff, very famous secular Jewish writer for the Village Voice, was a secular voice against abortion, but he is the outlier by far. Everything I hear in the conventions, again, Christians are idiots, haha, and abortion is wonderful. So that, I don't hear any sideline issues. All abortions are good at any time, so on and so on.
There was an anti-abortion atheist for a while. His name was Bernard Nathanson, Dr. Bernard Nathanson. He was an abortionist. He was an abortionist, and he was convinced that it was murder from doing so many of them. Now, eventually, I think he converted to Roman Catholicism, which is really interesting because I think his name kind of gives him away as being born Jewish, but he was an atheist when he wrote the book Aborting America. So,
and he wrote Silent Scream. What's I remember from the story that got him was that they were just introducing ultrasounds into the culture, into the medical world, and he saw an ultrasound of what he was doing.
Lady Campion caught up on what you just said, that is the moral good. That's interesting coming from an atheist. Because they even get moral.
What does it even mean to be a moral good, right? I've had several talks with a Jewish philosopher who teaches at Rutgers, who's one of the few Jewish people at the secular thing. And he wasn't there this year, but I talked to his wife for a minute. He was out doing a Tai Chi retreat. Such an atheist, right? Anyways, I've had several talks with him about morality and where it comes from. And again, he's Jewish by background. He's got the conscience God gave him. So he knows, and he's like, oh, I'm deontological, but you're an atheist. So you're big on Kant. And that's your only big choice as a philosopher. But what I've run into is that with him, he literally said this, and you've heard this from Richard Dawkins. So this must be popular inside that circle. Well, we've had dinner conversations, and so we've learned about morality, and we've been evolving in our morality till now through dinner conversations, really. And he said,
that's all the real information is.
I said, I had some different dinner conversations than you did, apparently. But I asked him this. He said, can you give me an example of how we're progressing morally? And he literally said, I'm not kidding. He goes, well, we've stopped dueling, haven't we? I said, okay, so wait a second. We stopped dueling. So we've got 1,000 Frenchmen not killing each other every year now. We've killed about 150 million of each other in the last 100 years. So tell me how we're progressing morally.
We just have national duels. We don't have individual duels.
I think we do have individuals. I used to be a cop. We have dueling all the time. It's just not called.
Oh, okay. Well,
but you see, there's no real answer for these guys. Where are they going to head from? The classic, in philosophy, at least the classic atheist positions, egoism, whatever serves your own interest, emotivism, that's David Hume. You just you just emotionally react. There's no moral good. And the utilitarian versions of this. But either way you do this, you can always come up with any reason you want to kill somebody else.
Right.
With all of these philosophies. And so abortion, since they're mostly hard left, so they're big in climate change, that kind of stuff like this, we got to get rid of these people. And all you have to do is look at the United Nations or Bill Gates, for that sake, and you hear the same language. There's too many people.
Near this time last year, people came up with a lot of good reasons why they wish Trump's assassin had been successful.
Oh, yeah.
So, there's always a reason to kill somebody.
Oh, yeah. and to call it good. And you can see this now with that Luigi guy that shot the one guy. You can see it.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, see, I'm an hour from Boulder. I guarantee you, I've been on Pearl Street many times. I guarantee you there are people out there justifying the snot out of this, that this is a moral good to kill these old, ancient people walking along in the 60s and 70s and 80s to throw the firebomb, Molotov cocktails at them. I guarantee there's a fan club. There's a fan club for every murderer I can think of. And so what you have here with the Atheist Convention is a moral fan club for abortion. It is, again, a moral good. It's not optional. We need more of this.
Okay, so we're going to have to pick up this on the other side of our short break, because there are some preachers that really you just decide you want to be an atheist because this is not really a good marketing idea.
There are some preachers who think you should not be an atheist. Is what
Well,
you're
no, if you're looking at the church from the outside and this is the representation you're seeing, you might as well be an atheist.
Oh, I see. Yeah. And, we don't want to badmouth I just tried to present. Oh, okay. How do I do that? I just hit start sharing and nothing shared, Don.
It's up there.
Oh, you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
I see Worldview Theology Outlet.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't see it. I just want you to know. All right. So, yeah, our sponsor, we don't want to diss them or anything, but they have some questions here. Are you still trying to figure out how to clean up in the ministry business? Do you want to finally learn how to get to the bottom of growing a successful church? Would you like to flush away your failures and start having your best church now? Well, then you need Charlatan Ultra Soft, because nothing says well, nothing says theologically soft like Joel Osteen's Charlatan Ultra Soft. It's been tested by the man himself, and there's never any shortage. Never, not even during COVID times. If they ever come back, hopefully they won't. Personally tested by the man himself. It provides comfort where it counts. It wipes away even the most stubborn orthodoxy, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Keep those butts in the pews with Charlatan Ultra Soft, available at World's End Theology Outlet. So I just stopped sharing now. Did it go away?
I do have to question the money back guarantee.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that they would just take the bag as proof of purchase.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I guess, okay, Lady Caffeinated? No, Lady what? Campion. I guess it's just a larger version of what we all tend to do to justify our own sins. You and I, Bill, we kind of like looking back at the first century and comparing where we're at now, and it occurs to me that in the first century in which the church was founded, human life was not all that valuable.
Pretty much like today.
Nothing's changed. Pretty much like today. And it was the church that transformed things over 3 decades or so. Which brings me to a question about a guy named Tom Holland, who still is an atheist.
Yeah.
Who did probably the best book defending the need for Christianity, even though he's an atheist. And another very famous atheist, Richard Dawkins, is doing a similar thing. They're both calling themselves Christian atheist, cultural atheist. So how does this group deal with those guys, or don't they?
Well, the reason this group has split several times mostly is over the homosexual and transgender issues, and some on Islam. But what happened this I think it's in the last couple of years with the American Atheist Convention is that if you don't, again, they are hard left. So all things transgender. So transphobia is the big evil, that Christians are so guilty of, and homophobia. So we're so guilty. So that's what drives it. Whereas you don't see, especially at Dawkins. Dawkins comes out with a whole thing about an article about 2 genders. Well, you're not allowed in our world now. So it's like I said, that's why I'm joking. Why it's like the Baptists. They split over everything in the atheist world. The Satanist atheists have split. It's just human beings. And I don't know what I've heard a lot of and seen a little bit of on this, and this might relate to what you're saying, but the new atheists who are so angry, no new arguments, but 30 years ago, the New York Times falls in love with these guys. They're anti-theists even more than they are atheists. They're so anti-Christianity, anti all things God, especially Christianity. Maybe Judaism, never say anything about Islam, most of them, a few exceptions we talked about earlier. So they're anti-theist. They're angry. Yet there are some people, like you mentioned, Tom Holland, and Dawkins seems to be moving out of the angry camp into the, well, maybe we can use these people. Maybe they aren't the most evil people on the planet. Like Dawkins was talking 30 years ago, Sam Harris, Neil deGrasse Tyson, once we get rid of religion, we're going to have paradise. And,
and it hasn't worked out for him, has it?
Yeah, not quite. I mean, Jordan Peterson's been all over the whole place. So this is really interesting to see it's moving towards well, maybe we can engage with this. Maybe we do need some of these Christian values. Wow, how interesting. And a lot of people are speculating, this is what Islam has done to Europe, and the atheists have seen. I think Dawkins in particular has seen what Islam looks like, and as it's gotten closer and closer in his own backyard, it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. It's evil beyond belief, and he speaks out on it. Well, most of the people that the American atheists, I'm willing to bet, don't have a lot of Muslim neighbors, have not lived in a Muslim country, have not seen what that really is like. And so, I don't know, I've seen a softer version of this, Don, in the last few years, but not at the convention I'm at. It's very, very angry. And I doubt they'd have a Tom Holland speak there,
Right.
And Dawkins, by name, Dawkins is not there, in San
No, we had when there are still some really vehemently angry atheists.
Oh, yeah.
One of them was a youth minister in our presbytery on PCA, and he converted about a decade ago or more to full preterism. And he didn't tell anybody. You're supposed to go to your board of elders, your session, and tell them when you have changed your doctrinal view in a way that does not reflect our doctrinal standards, and he did not do that. And then he was fired because he converted two people from one was from the church's school, the other was from the church. That was my understanding. And they found out about this and they fired him, which is, I mean, yeah, you're supposed to do that. And he tried starting his own church. It never really took off. Eventually his marriage broke down, and his wife was very, very compliant with his theological changes. But I mean, it just so happened that his wife was our church admin and continued being that throughout this.
Wow.
And then he fell into sin. I don't know the exact nature of it, but he did. He went to therapy, and if I understand his book correctly, because he wrote a book, How to Kill God the Easy Way. So now if you look that up, you'll know who I'm talking about.
Oh, gosh.
And he gave Christians a challenge, if you can read this book and still be a Christian. Well, I went through the whole book, and it's just this endless rant. It is just, he's very, very angry. He brought nothing, zero, zilch, zap, nada to the table that was new. Nothing that I haven't heard multiple times over the 50 years I've been a Christian from atheists. Right. Nothing I didn't think of myself when I was an agnostic. Nothing. Right. Except anger. And so my question is, how many of these, here is a guy who is really invested at one time. And I'm wondering how much the level of anger is related to the amount of investment they had in the faith. Or in many, maybe not in all cases, maybe in some cases it's just I was sinned against, or some believer, hurt me very badly in many, maybe that's what accounts for anger in many cases. Or like I was raised in a Christian home and I felt it was shoved down my throat. Mm-hmm. Things like that. But I wonder how much of it is I was personally invested in it to a certain degree in a certain way. And I want to, that accounts for the anger. Do you see that much?
Well, I think, yeah, I would say it's almost the majority at Paganacon and at the Atheist Convention. In fact, the lady that runs Paganacon came to talk to Don, came to talk to Terry and I, my wife and I, and other members of our ministry. We were accused by the Satanists. They, wanted us thrown out of the Paganacon this year. And she literally said to us, do you know that, most of the people up here have had a negative experience with Christians?
Right.
And we're like, yeah, we know that. We understand that completely. I've been in the church a long time now, Ron, almost since 1972, 3, right in there. I've seen so much garbage. I have had so much garbage inflicted upon me by pastors and all sorts of people. I understand exactly why these people are upset. I can relate to them 100%. why they are so angry, because some Christian hurt them desperately bad.
I've been angry.
Deacon board, I get it. I understand that.
I've been angry at Christians who've hurt me. And you read the Psalms of David,
Yeah.
and he had a lot of reason to be angry at, I'm sure, people who were professing to believe in the Lord, and Paul talks about false believers, people who preach the gospel out of envy.
Like the Lord uses these terrible things to, cull the herd, as it were. I can't speak for everybody's situation, not at all. I have seen it so much. I'll give you an example, Don. Way back when, Don, you had a conference on Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yep.
You invited me to speak on witchcraft, so I'm kind of the weird one at a JW.
Yep.
So I'm expecting all these, former Jehovah's Witnesses, with the hope that there'd be some, like has happened, some present day Jehovah's Witnesses who are going to come along and hear the whole thing, like our friend Joan would do, and all this kind of stuff. So I go in there. I'm going to do my seminar, how to, why not burn witches, on witchcraft. And I'm probably 10 minutes in to my seminar at the Billy Graham Center, of all places. I'm 10 minutes into my witchcraft seminar, and this one lady starts screaming at me. I mean, she is living on tape somewhere. She's like, "You Christians, you're a bunch of hypocrites." I mean, she's just yelling. She is so mad. And I said, "Ma'am, are we hypocrites?" "Why, absolutely." I said, "I teach at a Christian university. I can give you examples of Christian hypocrisy through history you've never even heard of before." But I thought, as she was a former witch, okay,
Right,
and become a Jehovah's Witness, and then become whatever. I said, as somebody, as a Wiccan, no, she was a JW who became a witch. Let me get that straight. So now,
right.
so as a witch, what's wrong with hypocrisy? I thought each person decided for. I'm literally quoting, all the people we heard at the Parliament, where religious Phyllis Carlton, all the most famous witches out there. I said, I thought each person decides for themselves what's right and wrong, and nobody has the right to tell anybody else what they're doing is wrong. So if that's the case, what makes it bad? Why is hypocrisy bad?
Right.
And she just kept screaming and screaming, So that went on for about 40 minutes of my "Why Not Burn Witches" was my talk with a real live witch in the conference there.
She kept doing that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you were in the BGC. What year was this? Because I worked there for like
You
5
tell me,
years.
Don, when was that? That was a while back.
Oh, we had it at Wheaton College.
Oh, I was part of that one, wasn't I?
Billy
Don?
Graham Center. Yeah.
I gave a lecture in that one.
Yep, you did. I don't
I might have
remember.
met you, Bill.
It reflects the point, though. I understand the anger that people have towards Christians who have hurt them. As from the atheist perspective, though, you can't really argue that that's wrong. And the more honest ones, while they'll say it out loud, can't possibly live it. You can say,
Right.
I'm going to go Nietzsche here for a second. You can talk all you want about how everything's just perspective and it's all, there's no morality from God or any kind of thing, the way Nietzsche would talk, God is dead and all this fun stuff he said. But you can't live it. You can't possibly live it. You are still going to be angry. You are going to be happy. There are going to be things that are right in the world and things that are not right in the world. You're going to know that. Again, I would argue from our perspective, it makes sense because as believers, we know that God put his law inside the heart of even the pagan, right? So
Right.
Do pagans know that it's wrong to rape and murder? Why, yes, they do. Do atheists know that it's wrong to rape and murder? Yes, they do. You'll get some of these guys, again, I'll go back to Nietzsche and so many others. You get some of these guys who will say, no, it's just an illusion. Nice try, guys. It's just a perspective. Good luck with that, guys. Because then they're going to complain about this or that. And they always do. Nietzsche ripped on his sister who was dating this anti-Semite, who later they become great buddies with Hitler decades later after Nietzsche dies.
Yeah.
He rips on his sister. Why? If there's no such thing as good and evil, why are you ripping your sister for dating this anti-Semite? I asked this of my professor at CU Boulder, Bob Rogers, famous atheist teacher there. And we were having this whole class on Friedrich Nietzsche, the famous atheist in the 1800s. And this whole thing came up about how Nietzsche, perspectivalism is called in philosophy. There's no such thing as good and evil. It's all an illusion. It's all just made up in your heads. Blah, blah. He had 1,000 things to say. And so I watched a thing on the History Channel or something like this about Nietzsche and this whole thing with his sister and everything. And I asked Dr. Rogers, I said, so Dr. Rogers, I'm confused here. If there is no such thing as good and evil, I'm shortening it up. Why would he be so mad at his sister? He wrote all these letters that are out there against his sister's, dating the anti-Semite publisher. And Dr. Rogers literally put his head down like this in his hands And he says, we have a ghost in here. And I'm like, the whole class, like, how much dope is he smoking right now? Because he's had his head down in his hands. He said, I have a ghost in there. And then he pulls his head and he says, well, you know what? Perspectivalism's not true. It doesn't work. Even Nietzsche couldn't hold it. Great statement. Then he says this, most amazing leap of faith. He goes, but I just hope and know someday, somehow, somebody's going to make this work. And I thought, yes, it's a Thomas Train moment. Yeah, I'm going to get over that hill. Someday it's going to happen. Well, no, I'm sorry. 2 + 2 is 4. It's not going to change. We add more time to it. And good and evil is real. And Don knows from the way we taught, that's how I talk to people. I'm going to talk about I'm going to get to their consciousness if I can. I'm going to talk about good and evil.
Right.
And I know they know that. It's buried, but they know it. And so with witches or atheists or anybody, I'm going to press that point hard.
They do. Now, here's a question on this particular question. The caffeinated Colorado crew returns with, I don't understand the atheist argument that man can be moral without God. Instinct equals morality. So how is it that atheists can assert that we just inherently know what is true, what is moral, but yet deny God?
Well, that's what I said. The Rutgers professor, what's the best you're going to do? You're going to say we're evolving. I'm asking for proof. All I see is destruction. I'm going to go full Barry Maguire here. I mean, where do you go in the world?
Eve destruction.
There we go. Yeah. Where in the old people in the audience will hear this. Where do you go that communism, very good. Where do you go and not see the exact same behaviors, the exact same horrible things? Again, I was a cop, deputy sheriff for 3 years, working in a jail primarily. I've seen every evil thing you could even imagine, evil things that I didn't even imagine as a non-Christian. So where do you go? So where's this moral progress come from? Yet it's wrong to rape babies. And interesting enough, the pedophiles, and I met way too many of them, every one of them said, this is the way God made me. And that was in the early 1980s, before the atheists, or the homosexuals got so famous. But yet our argument as Christians is not that atheists can't be moral. Of course they can. They're made in the image of God. They have the ability to be moral.
Exactly.
It's explaining why should you be moral. How can you even address what morality is? The good standing atheist, has no difference between him and Joseph Stalin. So he might be a nice guy. Stalin killed millions. But from the atheist perspective, what makes Stalin a bad guy? You don't like him?
Well, so like Lady Campion says, it's almost the equivalent of why? Because.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good summation of the issue. Because they will argue that, well, we're moral, and I agree.
Sure.
I grew up an atheist. I know what that's like. I have one of our good friends lives 2 doors down. He really wants to be an atheist. He calls himself an atheist. I tell him, you can't be an atheist. He says, why? I said, because you're too smart. He goes, what do you mean? I go, in order to be an atheist, you would have to know that God doesn't exist anywhere in the universe, and you don't know that. And you're smart enough to know that you don't know that. You don't know that God didn't exist in the past or may not exist in the future. So you can't really be an atheist and be honest, intellectually honest. You can be an agnostic, though. How about that? So, but as I talk to him, what I discover is when he was young, his family was very involved in church, and certain things happened which, as a result of that, caused him to disbelieve in the church.
Sure.
And with that then was a rejection of God, and he's angry about that event.
Yeah.
So it really has nothing to do in his situation with whether God exists or not. He's mad ultimately at the church, not
right.
God is not even in a factor.
Don Richard Dawkins, I watched him on a tape several years ago in some video he was on. It was almost the exact same thing. He was a member of the Church of England, grew up with that, got molested, he said. This is his language, right? That he got molested in the church. And then he comes out and says, but, I don't think it was all that bad. I'm like, oh, yeah, you don't. Tell me that didn't mark your life, because every other person I've ever met, and I've met hundreds, I mean, seriously, hundreds, in the Philippines and so many other places, who this is the defining moment that hurts them so badly that it's
Right.
almost never get away from it. It haunts them
Right.
for decades. Even ones who have become believers are still haunted by these things that happened to him. So when Dawkins claims it didn't hurt, and I'm like, I guarantee that marked his life. And probably like your friend, something happened, and now he's
Right.
got to disavow the church and God.
Well, these discussions, and I'm glad you went to the Atheist Convention. I should, probably make it a point to try to go next year.
Well,
as,
yes, you should.
as one of my other adventures that I would do with you. But what I found, and this just has to do with how I typically, and you do the same thing. I typically try to reach out to somebody who has a different belief system.
Yeah.
And either I ask them questions. I like asking questions that'll move us along so I can sort out why do they believe what they believe. Once I understand the why, that gives me a destination to talk about rather than just sort of out there in Never Land hoping to say something that'll be useful. So if they were in a Christian church and rejected it for some harm, then I can speak to that issue. Another thing is that I like to do a lot is what I call the lurker effect. We wrote about this a while back. I
Right.
like to talk to somebody else, so that those in the group can hear, listen in, and maybe even interject, but they're not on the hook to make an answer. So they can listen to what's being said on both sides. I had years ago. I was working as a construction manager for a construction company. The owner was Jewish, but atheist, and the secretary was an atheist as well. And she was mean to me most of the time, but I didn't really care because I was just doing my job. But twice a week when I'd be in the office, he and I would get in these long debates about the existence of God. And then I would leave and I go, okay, I don't know if that's helpful or not. She eventually left and then came back about a year and a half after she left, and she called me. She said, "We have to meet." I said, "Okay." She goes, "You're the only person who will understand this." And I said, "Okay." So I talked to Joyce. She said, "Go see her." So we met for lunch, and she was positively glowing when we met. And she said, "I have to tell you, I've become a Christian."
Wow.
And she said, "It is because the whole time you worked there, I was mean to you and you didn't seem to care. You were sort of nonplussed about it. You still treated me nice, and I didn't understand that. Second, every time you would talk with the owner and then leave, he would come to my desk and say, 'What if he's right? What you were saying really bothered him.' And I listened to all of that, and that settled into my mind. And then when she moved to a different state, she had a baby, and started going to church. And she said, and they were saying everything that you had been saying all that time. So you can get away with saying a lot of things that are going to be spiritually important to somebody if you're talking to someone else in their vicinity.
I've had that happen too. It's always a blast to hear that later on that somebody else responded, maybe even more so than the person you talked to, right? Makes it even more fun. Don, like you, and Ron, I think you've done some of this, but my whole time in ministry has been going to places we're not wanted, whether it's witchcraft meetings or Buddhist temples or Parliament of World Religion, stuff like this. And I believe that my Father is sovereign and that he has known from the foundation of the world, Ephesians 1, who he has adopted as his children and all that kind of fun stuff. I don't know how that's supposed to happen, but I know he's called us to go forth and share the gospel. Okay. So I tell people to come with us as volunteers or victims, depending on your day. If you're expecting them to fall down and believe in the gospel of some witch in a witchcraft conference, you're going to be very disappointed. You're never going to go back. But we have stories every single year of Mormons, Satanists, witches, and Hindus who we get these letters or these calls from people years later that now they become believers. And it's so fun. Right. It's like the Lord throws us a bone to remind us we plant and we water.
Right.
That's what we do. Wherever we go, we plant and we water, and the Lord will bring in the harvest. And I'm honored that he uses idiots, like myself and that kind of thing. And I think at least a part of our heavenly experience will be hearing these amazing stories, the dominoes that have fallen all over the place. I'm sure that's the case with, how I came to the Lord.
Right.
Somebody was praying for me that I didn't even know. Maybe my grandma, who was dead, had prayed for her grandchildren because she was a believer, and the only believer in my family that I know of. So maybe she was praying for all of us and that kind of thing. Anyways,
Right.
I just look at this, what you're talking about, the lurker thing, is that we're called to go forth, to share the gospel, to be faithful.
Right.
And I've done great conversations, brilliant arguments, remembered every illustration, and I get that 1,000-mile stare where it's like nothing's getting through. Then I've been in a conversation with a garbage eater on this bizarre cult years ago, and I forgot half of what I normally want to say. I screwed it up. I remember driving away from that being so discouraged. Did I screw up that talk or what? And that guy comes to Christ 9 months later and, cites the conversation I had with him. I'm like, what? I screwed that up, but I'm not in charge.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we have two other questions on the boards here. One is from Justin Stafford, who says, "Atheist here if anybody needs help with science or philosophy." Okay. We appreciate you being here.
What means I'd help. I teach philosophy, so Justin, please be a little bit more specific about what you're saying.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, he thinks we need help.
Yeah. Well, it would seem that he thinks we need help, although.
Yeah.
Well, I always say I need help. I learn all the time. Yeah. I'm curious about what I need help with science philosophy. Could be more specific.
Okay. They said this is in response to the caffeinated crew. So I'll let them handle it. They're quite well.
Well, what existed before the Big Bang is an interesting question.
You want to draw a quote from Lawrence Krauss? You want to talk science for a second? I love this line. A bubbling, boiling brew of virtual particles, quote unquote, that move so quickly we can't even observe them. And I'm like, oh, that's science. So much for empirical,
how many people were there to observe that?
Yeah. Well, bubbling, boiling brew sounds like something to me, not nothing. So
virtual particles, are those like not real particles?
Well, that's what the word means. If we're using English here, I use this in my class every year because Krauss has gotten so famous.
So Fred Woods, by the way, asked a question I don't have an answer for.
Virtual bubbling, boiling brew, this stupid line. I'm like, you know what, guys? You just push the question back for that because that sounds like something. Where did the bubbling, boiling brew of virtual particles come from?
Right. What came before that?
Helped us at all here.
Yeah.
All right. You just moved a step back one step. What's his ears? The DNA guy, panspermia guy. My brain just went dead.
Francis Crick.
Francis Crick. Thank you.
Yeah.
Life couldn't happen here. Great. The way Darwin imagined it, you're right. You're exactly right. So it had to come from somewhere else, which he never identifies. Right. All you've done is push the question back one more step.
Well, yeah,
but there somewhere.
But by pushing back the question, you're acknowledging the unfeasibility of
your view,
biological evolution to have taken place on Earth.
Oh, and Crick says that too. He's flat out says.
Right. So Fred Woods asked this question, and I'm going to let you wrestle with it, Bill, because you have more experience with jails and prisons. Why is there a disproportionately high number of theists and to atheists?
All right. So formally, I would say this, because atheism is a very small subset of the human population. Very small. Whereas people who claim to believe in a God or the God or whatever is the majority population in every country you go to. So just proportionally, it's like saying, why are there more white people in jail in Orange County, California than non-white people? Well, because the majority of the population is white. So the criminal subset of that population is going to look that way. And like I said, I saw that in the jail. It's not like the atheists. Again, there's a handful of them that are very articulate in that. And then there's the majority of people that just, if there's a God, who cares? Let's party. That was my view, that type of thing. But I think it's just demographics at that point. There's more theists than atheists, and there always has been. So when you get a criminal subset, that's what it looks like.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Well, why are there more theists than atheists in the foxholes? and in the trenches of a war. It's kind of like, have you ever been in a jail? Have you ever been in a prison? You're going to pray a lot,
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, so Bill's information is in the description panel. If you want to go to his website, you can see other stuff he's up to, which is usually no good. And I am his rent-a-friend, so he owes me this monthly payment, by the way.
You did change our domain name, right? Because we got nailed on that 3 months ago, Don. I think I told you. The Haven Ministry.
Yeah.
We're so special, about like the University.
I did get it, and I put the link in there, and they can click on the link and go look at all your stuff. And he will be with us tonight for those who join that particular group at 8:00 Central Time. And we're going to start. He's starting a 4-part series on Islam, actually. So,
great.
Okay. One quick one before we do sign out here. This is from Pavel D. I think it is. So God is just a tool you need when you're desperate.
For some people, yeah. We're not advocating for that, but yeah, a lot of people use God when they're desperate and they have no intention of really believing him or obeying him, but they sure want his help sometimes.
Right. For me, that wasn't and generally is not the case. It is, to me, the most intelligent answers to the evidence that we have for existence, etc. Is the Bible fundamentally reliable? Did Jesus incarnate? Did he die? And did he physically raise from the dead? I think there's strong evidence on all of those counts. And so that moved me from being an atheist to being a Christian ultimately. So
he wants to know what evidence, and it's like the end of the program. Maybe we should do
end of the program. Yeah.
Maybe we should do a follow-up episode on the evidence of everything you just listed.
We could do that, and we've also written on that. So
there's a singer named Kelly Roll, a very interesting guy in all sorts of ways. Speaking of jail, that was an inmate for years and all this kind of stuff. Interesting statement about where he's going. But he's got a song called "Need a Favor" or "I Need a Favor," and he says, "Why do we always pray when we need a favor?" And he goes, "I need a favor." I would say, I can say it in my case, the honest answer is, I was desperate because I was near death. I was going to kill myself. I didn't care anymore.
Right.
So you want desperation? Yeah, look at me. But I'm on LSD. I'm a mess. Show me an answer somewhere.
And the question is, has the answer worked for you?
Yeah. Well.
And here's another question. Not just work for you. If you have the answers, will you believe? Very often, these kinds of questions come to me, and I ask them that question. They go, no. So it really isn't about evidence. It's about a decision that you want to make.
Absolutely.
A book I would strongly recommend would be "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist" by Geisler and Turek. But if you want to stay an atheist, you don't want to know about the evidence anyway. So the question isn't even an honest question that is being asked. And a friend of mine who's passed away would often say, honest questions deserve honest answers.
Well, right there,
dishonest questions don't deserve any answers.
Pavel already has rejected the book, Don, so I guess...
yeah, well, I can understand why. If he's committed to being an atheist, it's not a good book.
Let's open it up for intentions. If he comes to the point where he really is interested in the evidence, sure, I'd love to talk.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to talk, you can contact Bill Hunsburger, and he will love to talk with you. Again, for those who want to join us tonight at 8:00, be here, and Bill will wax eloquent on Islam, I think. Or he'll try. Ron, would you walk us out of here, baby?
Well, let's give credit to whom credit is due. I hope you can see this, because I can't.
I can't.
I'm sharing.
It's all blank to me.
Try that.
You got a black screen, Bill?
Start it.
It's
all right. Our resident cult leader profiler is Neil. Before me, our wardrobe manager is See How It Fits You. Culinary services are provided by Chef Ham and Cheese. Our tinfoil hat provisioner is Just In Case. Jehovah's Witness coverage comes from Armageddon, and Dia Moser, our Mormon archives manager, is Polygamous. Our liberal denominations bureau chief is Lucy Goosey. Transgender issues coverage comes from Ben Hur. Special correspondent for cults based on the Hindenburg disaster. turkeys, no dehumanity. Our fact-checking supervisor is Yola Cullen. Technical assistance comes through Merkel Research. Our legal advisors are at the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham & Howe. Our grievance resolution director is Giovanna Pisami. Our director of privacy assurance is Wiretapping. And original idea sourcing comes from Drew A. Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. in cooperation with Emergency Manicure Productions, both of whom are solely responsible for this content, although you will never go through that in a court of law.
Never happened.
All right. Okay. I can't wait to see that on the YouTube channel.
Well,
just looking at the screen and talking on that one?
Actually,
it's
we all
gonna be
look
fine.
better when the screen is black. Let's be honest.
I have to. Do you want to give Pavel your email address?
Sure. It's Hans, HONZ1, Hans1 at MSN.com.
Hans1. Let me put that in. I'll try to type it in and then I'll end this for today.
Thank you,
Hans,
Justin. We're positively...
Hans1 at what? Oops.
MSN.com. Yes, I'm a dinosaur.
And
Well, Don stores an AOL email.
That's pretty bad. That's even more of a dinosaur.
That's kind of cringe, isn't it, Don?
there y'all go.
There y'all go.
Adios.